it all came together, and I was like, this is two genres of game that I love all in one, right? Like, and then I thought about it and I was like, but I can't get into this game until I go to the city builder game, which is where I gather my resources. So once I run out of the fuel that's required to go and capture these creatures and then battle these creatures, I've got to go into IZ, which is Illuvium Zero. And then I was like, okay, this is literally three genres of game all in the one universe. This is crazy, right? Like that was when the penny dropped for me.
We are back for another episode of Between Two Layers. I'm Carly Reilly, here joined with Robbie Ferguson, of course, as always. And we're joined by a special guest today, Kieran Warwick, who is the co-founder of Illuvium, which is an upcoming open world exploration NFT collection autobattler game. But I think there's like other descriptors in there that I'm missing, which you can tell us about. Really excited to have you on, Kieran. It feels like Illuvium, like y'all have been busy. It's just been like lots of exciting news coming out of the Illuvium world. You have the public beta for the arena gameplay is happening now. So you're getting feedback as we speak about that side of the business. You also have Illuvium Zero and Illuvium Overworld. Did I hear correctly? Like probably beta's coming out before the end of the year?
Yeah, that's correct. And thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited about this conversation. But yeah, we've got a lot going on.
I was gonna say I'm not even done. You've got ILV just got listed on Coinbase. I mean, for a bear market, it's not too bearish over in the Illuvium space. I do want to kick off just people who have heard of Illuvium. It's like, okay, a blockchain game, cool. I feel like what you guys are doing, the vision here is actually a lot bigger in scope than like a fun blockchain game. Can you just like level set us here? You had a great tweet thread about it recently. What like the full vision of Illuvium really is?
Yeah, for sure. So we're trying to build out fundamentally an IP, right? Something that is not just a gaming ecosystem. It goes further than that, where we want to have a Netflix series, we want to have movies, we want to have merchandise and plushies and stuff like that are literally everywhere. Very similar to how Pokemon did it 2 decades ago. And that the two of the founders, myself and Grant, Pokemon was our lives growing up, and so we really, really want to tap into those nostalgic games that we used to play when we were young and make them more modernized, and then use the blockchain to make it this entire interoperable, seamless experience where you can take assets from one game, bring them into the next game, and then continue on. And rather than having to continue buying new game, you literally just take your asset and you can go play the next game that we create and the next game. And so it's the first time that a AAA game has ever been able to access that sort of technology and that sort of user experience. And yeah, we're really, really excited about it.
I feel like what jumps out for folks once they start looking at Illuvium is just the graphics and how gorgeous this is as a game. Like that's like the initial wow standout factor, I feel like, with Illuvium. I read a stat, and I need you to tell me if this is the correct stat, that it's like 1.8 million people have signed up in one way or another for Illuvium.
Yeah, we actually thought it was a little bit more, but once we combed through all of the duplicates and stuff like that, we just cleaned it up, and it's now 1.8 million. Yeah,
that's hilarious. That like somehow that was you're like whatever, not turning it into a negative, but I'm like that number blows my mind. Like how many of those people realize this is a crypto game in your opinion?
I would say a lot, right? Like the crazy thing is we haven't gone out to mainstream on purpose, right? We don't have a product that is sufficient enough to start tackling our competitors in Riot's teamfight tactics, which I'm addicted to. Like we were very realistic, right? And so those people came in. I would say a lot of them were, Axie players, Pegasus players, like those. In that bull run, we had about 3 million active people that were playing crypto games. And so we captured a lot of that market. Obviously,
like two-thirds of it approximately.
Yeah. Yeah, which I guess is pretty decent when you're talking about not even having a game out at that stage.
Yeah, Robbie, am I overreacting to this number? Like this truly knocked me over. I guess I didn't realize there were 3 million players at the peak, but
yeah, I think the first thing is what is bots, and the fact that it's been cleaned out and verified is pretty significant. And the second is it's just a very large number, even for actual real games. Like I think Hearthstone at its peak has something close to 10 to 15 million DAO. Having this many signups pre-beta is big for mainstream games, let alone for Web3 games. I think ultimately the other key proof point we've seen is the $72 million land sale, which was a fifth of their land in a day. And for us, if you annualize that, that's the highest revenue game in the world. It's certainly the highest Web3 gaming sale to date. And so I think not only is this a broad audience, but it's a very highly engaged and monetized audience. I expect the average revenue per user to become smaller as the game's audience becomes wider. That's kind of natural, but equally you'll have more value accruing to a lot of the assets sold there, where it's effectively a kind of land assets.
What are you guys looking for during this beta round? Like what's the data you're looking to collect as folks are actually in there playing the arena game? And this is your second beta, I believe, so it sounds like there's already been a round of iteration.
Yeah, so feedback, like any beta, the most important thing for us is, as I said, we've got something like 480,000 people that have registered just purely to get into this specific beta, and we've only let 30,000 in, which is extremely frustrating for our community. But at the same time, it's not about getting this large, massive net of feedback. We really want to scrutinize who we let in and get the feedback that we need in order to really polish the game up. Because as I said, we're not trying to compete with other Web3 games. We're going after the big players in mainstream, and Riot has got a 7-8 year advantage on us with teamfight tactics. And so when this game launches, we need to make sure that we've compiled all of the feedback from the audience and then really, really go hard at just capturing that market share. And so, yeah, that's what it's all about right now.
Kieran, I was going to say, it might be interesting for the audience for you to share a bit of notes, because I know we talked about it, about why you chose for the earliest genres of the games that are going to be live, for instance, for Zero, a auto battler.
So Aaron, our other co-founder, he's the game designer, and we're actually, funnily enough, all brothers, right? And so we all bring this different element to the game development. And when we first were looking at it, we just couldn't agree. Grant and I wanted to build a collection-based game similar to Pokemon, and Aaron was like, he's a little bit older than us. He's about 7-8 years older, and so he missed the Pokemon collection, time of era of when we would collect anything back in school, and so. From his perspective, he was like, I want a skillful, competitive, e-sporting game. And we were like, yeah, I mean, that's cool. Like, I played TFT. I was sort of in the middle, but we just couldn't agree. And so it was 2 days, 3 days of fighting. And then we ended up going screw you. And we all went away. And then Aaron was like, you know what? I will just design the game. He's the game designer. I'll just build a GDD that includes both. We will just mash the genres together, and then everyone's going to be happy. And we were like, great, that sounds amazing. Now go off and do that. And he did.
Is this partly a question of how grindy the game is? Or does that kind of play into is it an auto battler versus kind of other styles of gameplay?
This is the crazy thing. This is when the penny dropped for me. Like, we've coined this a new genre of game, and we're calling it an IBG, which is an interoperable blockchain game. And it has been the plan since inception, right? Like that moment where Aaron was like, I'm going to mash two genres together. We knew it was coming. But when I experienced it in the overworld, the guys gave me a build about a month ago now, maybe even 6 weeks. When you go from that sort of creature capturer style of game, you go into a turn-based combat system, right? Which is really basic. It's like growl, tail whip. It's super boring, right? Now, when in our game you port into this new arena and you're in a battle, yes, it's with NPCs and you're battling against the computer, but it's an auto battler, which is so much more strategic. It takes a much higher level of thinking to be able to win the battles, and you're capturing multiple. It's not just a single creature that you're capturing. You have the opportunity to capture, however many are on the battle board, as long as the encounter doesn't collapse. And so that was when things really it all came together, and I was like, this is two genres of game that I love all in one, right? Like, and then I thought about it and I was like, but I can't get into this game until I go to the city builder game, which is where I gather my resources. So once I run out of the fuel that's required to go and capture these creatures and then battle these creatures, I've got to go into IZ, which is Illuvium 0. And then I was like, okay, this is literally 3 genres of game all in the one universe. This is crazy, right? Like that was when the penny dropped for me.
Robbie, have you played?
Yeah, of course I've played it. I mean, the Zero game is a lot of fun. It's very good. I think obviously the meta game is what is being developed, but the core game loop is live today, which is the auto battler itself. I think it plays very similarly to a TFT. Like, I think they've done a good job, and it's ready to go mainstream as soon as that metagame design is complete, which is, there's probably 5 games in the Web3 space you can say that about, and that's not me shilling. What I will say is, I think the thing I really like about this strategy is when League of Legends developed all of these new properties, the reason it was so powerful is they're able to share IP and brand association between each of these games. You have the same League IP and characters playing in Legends of Runeterra as you do Teamfight Tactics, their auto battler, as you do their MOBA, as you do Valorant, their shooter. And so you're building this constant IP value and love with your audience, and players are going to go and play each of these. But it is really like, it's a tiny drop in the ocean compared to what you can build with, as Kieran called an IBG, which is, sure, you have shared IP and shared characters, but you also have shared underlying economic value. The actual asset or the alluvial that you won in the overworld can now be used in the auto battler. And the reason this is so powerful is the greatest limiting factor on a game is its genre. If you make the best trading card game in the world, at the most you can have, 100 million players, because that is the total market for people who like to play trading card games. Auto battlers proved actually categorically quite impressive. Like the genre has been far higher traction and higher spend than people expected. You obviously have things like gacha on mobile gaming. On the sort of gacha side, it's fewer players with very high monetization. The most addressable markets in the world are essentially match 3, where you have appeal to everyone from 50-year-old stay-at-home mums to young children who enjoy playing the story-based plot lines. Now you can address all of those markets with shared underlying economic value and shared IP. And that's what really excites me about this is it's the first time you can actually create a shared economic enterprise with collective IP that can address every single one of these markets. Now, not all at once, but obviously this is like the vision of what Illuvium is doing with their 9 games, and at the start addressing one with like an MMORPG and an auto battler. Kieran, let me know if I've got that wrong. But
Yeah,
that's
that was
he's rendered speechless.
No, that was pretty impressive. So yeah, like we now obviously we're decentralized and we're governed by the people, which is another little element that we thought, why not sprinkle that in? We're doing all this other crazy stuff. Let's be governed by a council that's voted in by the community. And so we have an idea, and certainly Aaron has an idea of how of which games we want to build into this ecosystem. And I guess the best example I can give is we loved playing Mario Kart when we were young. And so imagine you're in this overworld, and like Robbie's saying, you might get over playing an autobattler, or you might get over it. You've caught all the characters now, you've grinded for 4 or 5 years. But imagine then we bring out a racetrack that's over to the side, and you run over there with your character and you bring your deck in. And if you have your Atlas, your Ramfire, they turn into cars, right? Which you're then racing around in a PvP environment, and you're not buying another game. You're not downloading another game. You're simply going into another part of the universe, but it's another genre in a racing game, right? Like we've got ideas to build, tower defense games, to build Clash of Clans type style of game, a dungeon crawler. Like, the possibilities are endless. And as Robbie is saying, we're not limited by a market size, right? Like, we can literally build any game and fit it into this IP, and you'll be able to take your assets and go from one to the other to the other.
Kieran, what's your thoughts on third parties developing these games and saying, hey, like, let me go do X, find out with the DAO, or we'll take some economic clip there?
So we've thought about it, and it's definitely, we've actually had conversations with a couple of studios about doing it. The trouble that we run into is the quality that we're going for in terms of like our graphics, our game design. We've acquired some of the best talent around the world from some of the largest studios in the world, and indie games don't fit into our universe, right? They just don't and can't, right? Like, the level of quality that our community has come to expect is AAA across the board. And so while I would like the business guy in me is like, hey, we'll be able to get to 20 games, and on top, Aaron's probably looking at that going like, oh my God, what is he saying? But it's not an easy feat to make all of this interoperable from a lore and game design perspective. Like, it's easy for a Mario or a Riot with League of Legends to do it, because it's all their same characters, their same lore, their same storyline. As soon as you start adding in other stuff, like, we have to get involved with our writers. We have to get our our entire team needs to sort of pivot and help that team build. And we've sort of said, look, 9 AAA games in the same universe is your 10, 15, 20-year vision. Let's not add anything onto that until maybe, I'm 50 years old, and then we can open it up and it's not going to stress me out.
This vision is so big, and I've been studying up on the gaming industry. I've been very upfront about the fact that I didn't grow up a gamer, so I have approached this like it's an intellectual exercise to understand this industry. And it strikes me that oftentimes game developers and publishers are very obsessed with the Metacritic score. It's like, you'll get this $1 million bonus if you hit a certain Metacritic score. For somebody like you who's trying to really revolutionize things and do things fundamentally differently, but are still, as you've said, very much trying to compete in that traditional world. Do you think about those things? Are you still shooting for some of those traditional metrics, or are you just we're above this?
No, definitely don't think that we're above mainstream games, right? That's where we're trying to get to.
Mainstream metrics of Metacritic liked this or whatever.
Yeah, of course we think about these things, right? We have to, right? We're not going to get to reach our goal unless we start adopting mainstream gamers, right? So we need to hit those metrics. That's what gamers typically look for. That's, when the marketing engine starts, they're going to look at, the different hype that we have across the universe. And so getting those gamers. As I said, there's only 2, maybe 3 million. Now it's not even close to that in the bear market inside Web3 that are gaming. There's 3.5 billion gamers that are in the mainstream. So if we weren't looking to hit those sort of metrics in mainstream, we would be going amiss, like definitely.
Can we back up? I would love to have the two of you just talk through where are we right now in like the state of gaming and maybe the state of Web3 gaming. We had that brief it's play to earn that very quickly was like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. It's play and earn. And then there's like earn and own. And where are we? This is sort of both of you.
Yeah, Kieran, you want to start?
It's an interesting one. I'm pretty aggressive when it comes to this, right? Like and Robbie has to take a little bit of a different stance. He's building a platform. He's got to nurture a lot of gaming studios along. But for me, I look at it and there's a negative connotation when it comes to NFTs and gaming right now in the mainstream. And the reason is because there isn't any really, really good games that can compete with mainstream games. And obviously you do, like Immutable made Gods Unchained, right? And so there are a couple of exceptions to that, but by far and large, you can't go and find a first-person shooter that's going to rival Call of Duty right now. It takes too long. It takes a long time to build those games. So right now we have gamers who are like, why is all this funding going to this Web3 space when I've got developers over here who have proven before that they can build really, really good games, and it's frustrating to them. It's super frustrating. They're like, screw Web3 games. They've got this 2D collectible game over here that's got 2 million players, and it's only because you can earn money, but I don't care about earning $20. I care a day. I care about real fun, immersive experiences, and that's what I'm used to in Web 2. So I think right now it's fairly negative, but as soon as games like Illuvium and there's like, as Robbie's saying, there's like 4 or 5 other games that are building, quite a few in stealth as well. Once they come out, gamers aren't going to go back from verifiable ownership of their assets with the ability to sell on marketplaces that are legal, where they're encouraged to do so. It just, right now, you can't find a game like that is as fun as mainstream. So it's like, well, until then, we are going, it's always going to be seen in a negative light. That's kind of where I'm at.
And play to earn in general, sorry, I didn't know if you were going to chime in, Robbie, I'll take this again. But like play to earn, I think even in Web3 is a dead concept. Like it was striking to me. I feel like Axie obviously really brought play to earn into the fore, and then it became clear like it wasn't a fun enough game to just in and of itself really be sustainable. And so then they had Axie Origin, which was, trying to broaden it. And that's what introduced this like free to play tier to like try and get new users into the platform. You guys were doing free to play on Illuvium. That was part of the roadmap. I think even before Axie switched over. To what extent were you kind of seeing around the corner there? And to what extent have you sort of modified some of the decisions, seeing the way that play to earn or some of the disasters in the space have played out?
So we had free to play design from the beginning, right? We knew that you needed to be able to have entice people to play. One of the worst experiences I had was when I first looked at Axie. This is like peak bull market. It was $900 to play the game, right? You had to buy 3 Axies to get into this 2D game. And I was streaming it to my brothers and they were like, what is this? Like that can't be, you can't have those sort of barriers to entry when it comes to onboarding. And I was very, very vocal, which pissed off a lot of people when I was tweeting and I was saying this economy is going to collapse. Like, I'm sorry, you can sit there and say, hey, no, it's a fun game. You're not playing for fun, right? Like, this is not a fun game. It's fun in that you're earning money, and at some points people were earning a lot of money, but that's not what a real game is about. And so for us, we've got, thousands of people playing this beta. They don't earn anything. They're just addicted to it, right? Like even Robbie got addicted to Private Beta 1 where, he's not earning any money. It's just, again, it's a fun game. And as long as you have more people, like how I see play and own or whatever you want to call it, right? Like we don't even coin it any of these things because we don't know what it's going to be yet. I would rather it just be gaming, right? It's just is what it is. But if you have a game where more people are extracting value than are willing to put in, your economy is not going to be sustainable. It was abundantly clear that was what was going on with Axie early on. And you need to have people that are like, okay, so I'm going to buy a skin, I'm going to buy an emote because I can then flex on people. And when I win, I've got, these cool things where I can show off and whatever. But in 5 years' time, the whole idea is you might have spent $1,000 or $2,000 on the game, but you only get back, say, $1,000, but you got 5 years of value of fun, right? Which is worth much, much more than that $1,000 that $1,000 that you lose, quote unquote. So for me, that's what Web3 gaming is about.
Yeah, and Carly, I think what Kieran said, the most important thing was this golden rule, which is you have to make sure that the inflows into the economy or how much time and money players are spending exceeds the outflows. Otherwise, the economy is fundamentally not sustainable. You can build anything you want while adhering to that golden rule. And so to me, play and earn is a very powerful proposition because what you're effectively doing at scale is replacing the billions of dollars games spend on user acquisition via Google ads with just sharing and backing the economy directly. So there is lots of ways to make these economic models sustainable. Now, I think there's going to be as many differentiated monetization or genres of game design within Web3 as there is within gaming today. There'll be games which monetize via seasonal primary sales and have exclusive sets and then let them float in the secondary. There'll be games that monetize purely via secondary fees. IMVU or Invu, which is launching over the next 3 months on Immutable, has 1 million DAO. And for the last 15 years, they've only monetized via taking clips on secondary transactions in this in-game gray marketplace. And so there it's very simple, which is just make sure that when you're generating these assets, you're not generating too many. And that the fun of the game is meaning that there's enough sort of internal demand for economic assets. So again, we're not super opinionated at the end of the day on how different designs will work out. There's going to be hundreds of these. But Kieran is exactly right in that you need sufficient autarky value to make the game fun enough to play inherently. And you need to make sure that exogenous demand or inputs in the economy are going to exceed outflows.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. And it to me in general, I've said this maybe on this pod before, but I've certainly said it publicly before. It's like this will hit mainstream when these are seen as great ways to subsidize a gaming experience. Just like when I finish playing with my toys, I can sell them at a garage sale and I haven't turned a profit on them, but they've now subsidized the cost of the new toy I want to go and buy. And it's so funny to me when I hear people in the gaming industry or in like the collectibles world who hate NFTs. I was just watching somebody rant about this earlier today. Because like if I went to one of my friends and was like, would you want to buy this alluvial? They'd be like, no, like why would I spend my money on that? But they don't spend money on skins in games anyway, right? Like they spend their disposable income on food and travel and clothes and whatever. To listen to somebody who's already spending hundreds of dollars buying Fortnite skins or like action figures tell me how stupid it is to spend that money on something that you actually have some ownership over and might be able to recoup some cost on. There's just like a hilarious disconnect happening that at some point will stop happening because logic must prevail for folks.
But here's the thing. I agree with them. I wouldn't do it. There's absolutely, if Axie brought out skins today and I was playing that game, I wouldn't put a skin on it. It's not it's not a fun, immersive game like Fortnite is. It doesn't have that same appeal. And so as soon as there are games out there, and we're building something where we're trying to break down that barrier even further. So it's not just free to play, but we've built in this non-custodial wallet system where you essentially don't even know that you're playing a crypto game. So we will keep your assets for you, and then at a certain point, and I need to speak to Robbie about this because we got to do this integration, but at a certain point, you're going to read something in Discord or maybe see in a forum or whatever it is, and someone's going to say, hey, I sold this Ramfire, which is one of our alluvials, for X amount of dollars, right? And that person's going to go, hey, I've got a Ramfire in my deck, and I've been playing with that, and I caught that like 6 months ago. And it's like, all you need to do is click a single button and you can migrate, and we will create your own wallet for you. And then at that point, you can go and sell it on the market. You can trade it. You can use it in game for whatever. It's yours. It's verifiable that it's on chain. You own it. And no matter what, no one can take that away from you. But the important thing there is you've just become a crypto user without even realizing. And that is what is the exciting thing for us. DeFi and other crypto mechanisms are scary for people. Gaming is very, very easy to understand. It's very easy to consume. It's very easy to get addicted to. And so that's how we feel people are going to adopt mainstream crypto in general, because it's, we're just going to make it so easy for them.
Y'all were made for each other. Immutable and Illuvium. It's like the perfect marriage. And it's like sets of brothers into gaming, believe in blockchain, live in Australia. It's like a perfect little match.
That's pretty crazy.
And the thing I really liked, Kieran, about what you said is this experience of, hey, you're just playing the game. You don't even know maybe that it's Web3. And that's exactly why we designed our global order book, right? Which is that user can sell inside that in-game marketplace, completely contextual native experience, but the buyer can come from anywhere. The buyer can come from, Illuvium's marketplace on the web, GameStop marketplace. It can come from Discord, where you can buy things, from a Discord chatbot. Like the most important thing is connecting buyers and sellers no matter where they want to trade.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
How did y'all first meet? And what's the origin story of Immutable and Illuvium coming together?
So we have another brother. There's actually 4 of us, and he runs Synthetics Protocol. Less so now. He's kind of stepped back a little bit, but his name's Kieran Warwick. And when we decided to look at building a game, first of all, we looked at Ethereum. We weren't going to look at any other chain. We wanted our users to be secure. I was very familiar with Ethereum, and so that was a no-brainer. But then we thought, okay, we need a scaling solution. We're talking about having millions of microtransactions potentially, per minute here in our game if we get to the scale we want. In Ethereum, you just can't have MetaMask popping up. You can't have someone paying $15, $20 for gas. And at peak times, like if we go back to the bull, like $300 for gas to capture an alluvial, it's like, this experience doesn't work. So we went to Kane and he said, interesting, we're actually going through the same sort of issues where we've got our staking and people are claiming their staking rewards and it's costing them as much as they're earning in rewards. Why don't you look at optimism? And this is where it gets a little bit contentious. Kane is a big optimism fan, but we looked at optimism. We looked at a couple of other solutions. ZK Sync was in there and Immutable was in there. And the thing that we liked, or the thing that was easy, and I guess it just worked out perfectly, was not only did Immutable have the best solution, and not only did they get gaming more so than anyone else because they'd already built Gods Unchained like 3 years before. They'd gone through all of the issues that we were looking at as roadblocks, and they were like, we're already 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of you guys, but we love the way that you're thinking. They were also these 25 minutes down the road. So it's like, we can go over to their offices. We always hang out in terms of their studio comes to us, we go to them. And so, working with them has been a really, really seamless experience. And we're adding scope, like our original white paper versus what we're building now is a nightmare for the Immutable team. Like we've added so many different things. Robbie touched on the land sale. They were like, look, we can't do this at the moment. And we were like, we have to be able to do this using your layer 2 solution. We had other side at that point who they spent $380 million on gas and they sold $350 million worth of land. We sold, yes, 4 times less or 4 or 5 times less than them, but we had $175,000 spent on gas. So the difference was insane. But getting to that point, the original standpoint was we can't do it. But then they were like, you know what? They worked really, really closely with our dev team, and it is like a marriage, right? It's like we've got to make this work no matter what.
You can't rug someone when they know where you live, if you're 25 minutes away, you got to do right by the person. It's too scary otherwise.
Exactly.
Robbie, anything to add in terms of when you first met Kieran and the team and
No, that's basically it. Yeah, Kane introduced us. I'm a big fan of Kane and also a big fan of optimism. I think we're kind of building different protocols. We're really obsessed with utility-driven economies and NFTs, and how do we design a platform that specifically solves for those needs? Because to me, the exciting thing is not, speculative art or collectibles. It's how do we take economies with hundreds of millions of players where people trade things for as small as 10 cents or a buck and make them real? And then how do we scale that from gaming to everything else, to finance, to houses, to sneakers, to intellectual property or tokenized insurance products? This is categorically the largest new market since like e-commerce or advertising. It's bigger than search, even in its TAM. And gaming is very clearly going to be by far the biggest category of that. I think it was pretty obvious when we met the brothers here and we started chatting about their vision, that they had a very bold vision. The thing I've always liked about the Illuvium team, beyond I think the technical capabilities, which has been, it's funny how well designed they've been to building a game here with, Aaron being obsessively experienced in TFT and Kieran having a lot of experience in tokenomics and Kane helping them design a lot of the early stuff as well. But it's also their commitment, I think, to full decentralization and fairness. So, they had offers from VCs in the peak of the bull market and at very sort of serious valuations with substantial discounts. And the reason they refused those is because they weren't able to offer those same discounts to the public market through, say, a smart contract or some capability, which I know they've now built. And so I think it's that religious commitment that builds a reputation that they're always looking at the community interests that is probably at the core of like the culture of the organization they're building. And if I'm bullish on them for one reason above any other, it's, the protocols or the games or the ecosystems that ultimately end up winning will be the ones that learn to have the fastest growth compared with the sharing of value. Because ultimately it's, well, hey, let's build a protocol that can be much bigger together. Let's build a series of games that can be much bigger when you're actually sharing underlying value. And so I think it's that commitment to ecosystem community that sort of sets them apart versus most of the other new games joining the space today.
There's probably one other thing to add to the craziness of all the different elements. You just spoke about or touched on tokenomics. We decided to do this thing called revenue distributions. And essentially what that means is 100% of the revenues, less the fees, across our entire ecosystem. So all of the in-game stuff that we earn, all of the merchandise sales, if we run events, it all goes into a vault. And then we purchase ILV back off the market, and we then distribute that back to people who are staked in the protocol. So essentially, there's no publisher that's seen as this demon that's just collecting hundreds of millions of revenues. It's pumped back out to the people who believe in the product. And so you get with that, you get the benefits of the community. Just the cumulative effects of that are incredible, and more people are talking about it, and they're saying like, hey, you need to buy an ILV, you need to buy an ILV, because that's the only way that you're going to get access to this revenue share.
My understanding is that when we talk about why traditional gamers are skeptical of crypto games, it's yes, there aren't fun crypto games. It sounds like what you outlined earlier, which is developers are maybe resentful because there's so much money flowing into it and they feel like they want to be getting it. But it's also this big one, which is that gamers feel like they've been burned before, where the big game companies have been incredibly extractive when they've tried to sell things to people. And it feels like this is a direct... You're confronting the skepticism about crypto gaming on all fronts possible. And this just feels like a huge one.
Yeah, it definitely is. You know, we've built a system where it's sustainable in that the treasury holds a certain amount of tokens. Right now it's about 13%. So a lot of people go, if you're giving all of the revenue away, like what are you going to do? Eventually you're going to run out of money. So we do stake those tokens and get that revenue share from it. But instead of it being 100%, the publisher takes all the revenues, we're only taking enough to keep the system operational. And that might end up being a hell of a lot more than what we end up needing. But it's a far cry away from traditional gaming where, you know, they're taking 100% of it. We're taking a very, very small chunk of it.
Few minutes left here. Let's do some fun questions. What are each of your respective favorite alluvials?
Mine's Squiz. So it's like this, I don't know, it's like a squid / octopus alluvial. I think it starts as a squid, ends up as an octopus. It's a bit contentious, but it was designed by my friend originally and then given to our concept team. And there's actually, there's a funny thing that's going on. There's the Cult of Squiz has already formed, and there's like thousands of people that have joined this cult. So yeah, that's mine. I
liked Atlas as I perused them.
Oh, you've just stolen mine, Carly. Yeah.
Sorry.
Atlas is quite cute. And then there's all the. I was a big fan of the gravity-based ones when I was playing Zero. So all the ones that kind of shoot stuff. Sorry, I don't know the names, Kieran.
Probably Totopi, I think you're talking about, and Tianti, which they were just way overpowered, and that's probably why you like them. And you could just nuke people from the you could just nuke them from the back. But yeah,
Kieran, I sensed a reaction from you when I said Atlas. Like it was just so stereotypical that you were unamused by it. Is Atlas like the large favorite for everyone?
You just said Pikachu, basically. That's...
Which is my favorite Pokemon, so you know what? At least I'm consistent.
Yeah, no, Atlas is our cutest little guy.
Really cute.
Yeah, it's almost like a puppy, so it kind of, yeah, a lot of people love Atlas.
Fair enough. All right, and we've been doing this with our guests. Robbie already answered these. This segment of the show always depresses me because I always find out what a late sleeper I am when I do this. But what is your morning routine, Kieran?
At the moment, it's surviving. I've been going to. I sort of work because we're in Australia. We need to work till. Oh, I don't know about Robbie. I would assume it's similar, but till sort of 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I cut it off. And I try to not do any meetings until like 9 a.m. But, lately I've been doing some like 7 a.m. starts. And so it basically, I get up, I have a juice, I drive into the office, I try and gather myself with a coffee. And then I start, reading through the 8,000 Telegram messages that I get and doing a little bit of admin. And then it's just meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, AMAs, all that kind of stuff.
I like that answer. I'm more of a night owl. So 2 to 3 a.m. and then trying to not start until 9 deeply appeals to me, as opposed to Robbie's like 5 a.m., 2 hours in the gym lifestyle.
Oh, I wish I could go back to the gym. I don't have time for that at the moment, unfortunately.
After the beta's done, once you get Zero and Overworld out the door, maybe it'll come back in the new year.
Hopefully.
Kieran, thank you so much for joining us. Robbie, any final questions on your end? Comments?
Go play the beta or sign up, and you might be lucky to get a spot.
I think
It still took me like a month.
I signed up, but you really shouldn't.
Do you want to get in the? Do you want to get in the beta?
I will be so bad. I do. Okay. I mean, I actually would love to play it, but you won't get viable intel from me. You know, you'll be like, who is this person just like running into walls and like really seems like this is not helpful data collection. So when you launch, I'll play, and because I won't actually be taking a spot from somebody who deserves it more than I do. All right. Until next time.